Whenever I would recall Fargo, the wood chipper scene was always first to come to mind, but images of the boundless, barren emptiness would soon follow. The feeling of bone-chilling cold was an overpowering element in the film. It is my intention in the following brief presentation to present evidence that the landscape in Fargo is not simply a setting, but a character within the film. So much so that the other characters must interact with the landscape throughout the film. They fight against it, are assisted by it, or are simply just trying to protect themselves from it. Fargo was released in 1996 and was written and directed by Joel Coen and Ethan Coen, or more commonly known as the Coen brothers. The Coen brothers were recognized for their unique mise-en-scene style and became well known in the 1990s. Miller's Crossing, Barton Fink, Hudsucker Proxy, The Big Lebowski, and Fargo were all directed by the Coen brothers and released in the 90s. Fargo earned Oscars for both Best Original Screenplay and a Best Actress award for Frances McDormand, who incidentally is married to Joel Coen. This first sequence plays out early in the film, where our two hapless criminals have just murdered a police officer. The more heartless and professional criminal needs to take care of the witnesses to his crime. This is the car chase scene through the foreboding landscape. The directors use a medium close-up of Stormare from the side view, making us feel as if we are sitting in the passenger seat. The low-key lighting increases the contrast between light and dark. We see Stormare clearly in the bright light, while everything outside of the car that is not within the headlights is pitch black. This strong contrast in lighting enhances the surrounding darkness, increasing the ominous nature of landscape. It is impossible to see anything outside of the headlights outside. The landscape feels claustrophobic in that it is so complete and swallows up anything. The background musical score increases the ominous nature of the surroundings. A thrilling violin gives us a sense of foreboding and then doom, until it finally stops once the last of Stormare's quarry is in his sights. Then all we hear is the spinning of the car wheel. In this scene, the landscape becomes helpful to the villain. First, because it makes it more plausible that they would have been able to get away with murdering the cop, because no one would be able to really see what was happening unless they were driving by. Second, as the worst happens for the villains, the landscape ultimately enables the bad guy to catch up to and kill the witnesses. A combination of the icy road and oppressive blackness causes a car crash, and the deep snow essentially traps the one witness who made it out of the wreck. The landscape plays a major role in this sequence, as it becomes the foe, or the enemy, of the victims, and an alliance to the criminals. This shows the landscape to be an autonomous being in the narrative of Fargo. The victims in this sequence are at the mercy of nature, which is enabling the criminals. In this second sequence, we can see further evidence of the main character interacting with the landscape character. Buscemi is attempting to hide the cash from his partner. The landscape haunts Buscemi as he tries to navigate through it, which makes his task almost impossible. The slow tempo and melancholy orchestra plays in the background of the tracking long shot of our crook, Buscemi, as he struggles to move to find a hiding spot for his jackpot. The landscape in this scene is quite desolate and gloomy. It gives the audience the feelings of overpowering emptiness, boundless with no connection to civilization, but a single icy road. Through alternating deep focus shots of the seemingly endless fence line and medium close-ups of Buscemi, we understand that the landscape is his foe in this situation. There is no real landmark as far as the eye can see. Through the point of view shot, combined with the level of framing, we are able to see what Buscemi is realizing and sympathize with what seems to be an impossible task. The landscape is not cooperating with the plan. His solution to mark the landscape is a ridiculous solution, as one snow event would obliterate his marker in a matter of an hour or so. Ultimately, he is at the mercy of the landscape. Throughout the entirety of Fargo, the main characters are fighting and arming themselves against the elements of the landscape. They struggle to move through it and protect themselves through layers of clothes, open ovens, and heaters. It is clear that the Fargo landscape plays a crucial role within the narrative of the film. It sometimes assists other characters, but more frequently works against them. Though the landscape is not listed in the initial credits, and not introduced as a character outright, I argue that it is not simply a setting for the human characters. Some would argue that the brutal landscape is simply a backdrop for the actors. I believe that the Coen brothers intentionally worked to portray the landscape as a character through the intentional cinematography, the long fluid takes, and constant character interactions. It frequently dominates the visual field and other characters. The landscape becomes an important aspect of the cinematic experience of Fargo for the audience. Simply imagine Fargo at 80 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. It would be an entirely different experience for the characters and the audience. I believe the unique style of the Coen brothers extends to using landscape as a character within Fargo.